Okay. Hello. Um, Hi, Stars. I am your co-star, Anand, and I'm going to talk about open source as a startup. So a little bit about me. I have a background, as a lot of you do, as a JavaScript, TypeScript, web engineer. Do a bunch of open source in my free time and have been doing that for a couple of years now. I'm Indian. I live in the Netherlands, where I am now, and I run a Swiss company. So whatever, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But yeah, so I've been building companies as far as I can remember. All of them are like tech-ish or tech adjacent. I was in the Forbes 30 under 30 list a couple years ago, and yeah, and I became recently a GitHub star. Just what's interesting I wanted to share is that my company was part of the Y Combinator startup accelerator program just a couple of months ago. So if you also have any unrelated questions, I'd be happy to answer that. So if you know, YC is a early stage startup program that has previously funded companies like Airbnb and Stripe and Coinbase and so on. So that was also like an unbelievable honor and almost a dream come true right after GitHub Stars. So over the past several years, I've been very lucky to have had the opportunity to work with a lot of different companies. Some of them you would see here, and so these are startups I've started or governments I've done consulting for, and so on. And I want to talk you through a little bit of these and my experience with open source, and yeah, it would fit in at the end, I promise. So let's start with Class Rebels. Class Rebels was my first company. I don't think I'm allowed to call it a company. This was when I was back in high school, and I was annoyed with the education system, like any other student would be. Like you would study one night before the exam and pass somehow, and especially in India with all the pressure. Um, of course, I didn't spend a lot of time studying. I like building products at an early age, and so I was like, there has to be a better way to do this. And I founded Class Rebels, which was an edtech company where we built a online learning platform where students could collaborate with each other, learn from each other. This is what it looked like. You had a little timeline view where you could see posts, you could connect with your professors, you can ask questions from your teachers, stuff like that. And the really ingenious part of this was the virtual library where we built. Imagine, if you're a student, you have to make notes of all of your classes, and instead of writing notes for every chapter, we realized that what if everyone shares notes with each other, and we built this virtual library where you could take a photo or upload a PDF and and share all of your study material with your friends, and they would do the same. So we ended up building a really nice library of free and open study material. This is basically how I passed 10th grade, I think. And what I learned here, the idea was that how do you make education collaborative? Because not everyone has access to the best, schools like I did. How do you make sure everyone get access to the best quality study material? And this was the first time I had a little bit of experience trying to build a free and open tech platform. At this point, it wasn't open source, although it was still on GitHub. I don't even think I understood what open source was back then. And but I learned how to use Git, how to build products online, how to work with other people. We were three co-founders and some other people. Um, and then I kind of started doing a bunch of other side projects. So just another example is Saga Music, which is a free music downloading and sharing app I made also several years ago. And it was really simple. It looked like this. You could just search for the name of a song, press enter, and either stream it or download it. And how it worked under the hood was that I built an API that converted, it used YouTube DL to convert. First, it used the YouTube API, found the song, converted it to MP3, then use the iTunes API, inject album art, like make it like look like a legit MP3, and then download it. And this was all fully free and open source. And somebody approached and said, "Hey, this could be a really cool music streaming app." And they helped me build an Android app. So I had no experience with Android. I mostly did product work there. And an unknown open source contributor built this app for me. And so we had a native material design Android app many years ago. And again, type or tap on a song and then it's downloaded to your library. So it was a really cool open source project. Of course, with YouTube DL, there's always a bunch of stuff. And it had a lot of downloads. Like I think in the first couple of days, it touched 10K. It was like my biggest project. Imagine as, a high school kid, you have a really cool project. And I uploaded it to the Play Store and I was like, this can be a legit thing. And then, of course, a company sent me a lawsuit letter. And obviously, under Stars NDA, I can tell you, but I cannot actually tell you the name. So you'll have to guess the company. But just for context, they were about to launch their own music streaming service at that time. And so they were pretty, and I was like, yeah, okay, that's not happening. So I shut it down. The code is still on GitHub in case you're interested. I think maybe part of it is in a private repo, but if you're interested, happy to also make that public, but most of it should be public. But anyway, more importantly, the idea was, how do you share and find new music and download it for free? Of course, that is not cool. Since I have learned that there's a reason you pay for music, and it's a very good one. So please don't pirate. But more importantly, it was my first open source and community-driven project. This was, fundamental to who I am as a person, because I realized that, whoa, I can upload a little bit of code and hundreds of thousands of people are using it. And random strangers want to help me build it better. And so this is really how I learned about community and how can free and open source software really be used as a tool to solve problems. And then I did a bunch of stuff. So for example, most of you may know me for Oswald Labs, which is still, I guess, the thing I'm most famous for, which was an accessibility technology company that I started. And it started as a weekend hackathon project at Angel Hack. And it looked like this. It was just a little browser extension. Made it over a weekend, MIT licensed it. And it was really simple. You would set your display preferences. So, what kind of color contrast ratio do you like? And what line height, letter spacing. You could really customize the web. And you press the button and it redesigns the page for your reading preferences. And it got a lot of positive feedback as well. Someone told me that it changed their life. This is a review that I stole right now from the Chrome Web Store. It's still there. And I got an email from a therapist who works with dyslexic kids in New York, and she told me she's using it and it's the best browser extension. And this was like, whoa, I made something at a weekend hackathon, open source again, and this could be a thing. So I thought, okay, let me drop out of college and start a company. And that's how I started Oswald Labs. And then I kind of lost my way. We built a phone for people with disabilities because I thought, hey, more people are using phones as their first device to come online. That was not a good idea, although we had some really cool tech. So, we invented this system with which you can use vibrations in speech. And so you can use a smartphone even if you're completely blind. So that was a bunch of cool stuff I did. Didn't work out at all. But then we took some of that tech and made it into open source apps. So for example, Augmentally is an app that's in the App Store and Play Store. And you can download it, and it helps kids with dyslexia use AR. So you can scan your textbook and read it more easily. So we built a bunch of stuff over the years, and eventually we realized that we're a B2B SaaS company. And now my co-founder runs that company. It's going really well. I did that for 4 years. But yeah, so the idea was information should be freely accessible. There should not be any barriers in information. 15% of the world population, so that's over 1 billion people, have a disability. And the idea was that the web, Wikipedia, even not just GitHub, it's this magical place where all of human knowledge is there. And so people should be able to access it. And so I did a bunch of open source stuff. And it was the first time that I built a real company built on top of open source. And it's even more interesting because it was built on top of a hackathon project, which is also doubly exciting. And yeah, so that's then the second chapter. And then I'm going to quickly jump to the final part, Pabio. So Pabio is the company that I run now. I've been doing it for over a year. That's also the company that was part of Y Combinator earlier this year. And we just finished raising our seed round of a bit over $2 million. I can share more info later. But yeah, going really well. Pabio, we do living as a service. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'll make it simpler. We do rent to own furniture with personalized interior design. So imagine you rent a new apartment, right? And now it's an empty apartment. So either you can go to IKEA and buy this junk that's going to break really soon, or it's bad quality and bad for the environment. It's fast furniture. Or you could hire an interior designer and get this beautiful apartment proposal, but then you have to shell out like $20,000 to actually buy all the furniture. So we solve this problem in two ways. You come on our site, you upload some photos of your apartment, maybe if you have a floor plan, and then you receive a personalized interior design proposal. So that's where all the core tech is. We built our own rendering engine based on top of Blender, with which you can get like photorealistic renders. Like if you look at our site case studies, there are photos where even I cannot tell the difference if this is a photograph or a render. So you get that render, and that's like the first magic moment. People are like, "Whoa, I can live like this," and then we give them all of the furniture on a monthly subscription. So instead of paying anything upfront, you could pay a couple $100 a month and get a fully furnished apartment. And then all of your payments go towards ownership if you want to buy out the furniture, or at the end you can just return it and we would refurbish it. So it's like a sustainable, high quality furniture company. We're based in Europe. We're active in Switzerland and are going to be in Berlin by the end of the year. So that's Pabio, right? Completely unrelated to what I've done. Long story how I co-founded this company, but with someone with like a background in like hardcore tech, this was a really interesting challenge. How can you use technology to disrupt the furniture industry, which is like, a centuries old industry, and they still use printouts for order forms and like. So yeah, we do delivery, installation, everything. You pay a monthly subscription. Pavio, we've done about 60 apartments. It's going relatively well so far. And so just, I really wanted to put in like a business school slide here, because I know programmers are annoyed by these business school matrices. But yeah, if you draw a little, 101 business school diagram with like a rental versus buying and interior design, there are companies that do interior design, there are companies that do rental furniture. We're trying to combine it and make it like a nice offering for people. And so one day I was like, so we're not like building a developer tool, but it would be nice to know if my API is down, because at the beginning I was still kind of figuring out how auto scaling works and how should I do architecture. And so I thought, okay, let me build an uptime monitor. Of course, I didn't want to build an uptime monitor because I was too busy building a company. So I tried a few free ones, and I realized that they're either too limited or you cannot customize them enough. And so I had the idea that, hey, this new GitHub Action thing is working really well. So I created a scheduled workflow that runs every 5 minutes. And imagine it just curls your site. And if it's an error, it would tell you that, hey, your site is down. And if it works fine, you can just ignore it. So it would just keep running in the background. And I thought, hey, that's actually an inspired idea. We can build something from this. And I ended up building Upptime, which is an open source project that helps you get a status page, uptime monitor, everything you need. It's my most popular project. It has like 8,500 stars on GitHub. By far my biggest impact, I think, in the open source ecosystem. And it's really simple. We have like a GitHub template repository. So you can just click the use this template button or fork it, and you get your own uptime repo. It has all of the GitHub's actions pre-configured, so you don't have to do that. And then just wait, let it run, and then you get this little README where you can see the live status of all of your sites. So anytime your site goes down, this README is updated, so you can see we do some. And then over the past year, with feature requests and community feedback, we added like a bunch of features like response time graphs, so you can actually see if you do a commit and then it makes your site slower or not, history, stuff like that. And it auto generates this site. So if, for example, our status site, which is why I built this project, is pabiostatus.com. But for example, Ubuntu Canonical use Upptime as well. So there's like a bunch of companies who started using this because you got this really simple live site that you can share with your customers. They can click on, see the historical time. They can see all of the downtimes. And so I thought, hey, I'm using GitHub Actions. Let's just use GitHub for everything. So the site is hosted on GitHub Pages, but as soon as any of your endpoint goes down, GitHub Actions opens a new issue and adds you or adds the team or the people responsible. You can configure all of this. You can also send notifications to Slack or SMS, whatever you want. But so the idea is you use GitHub Actions for the uptime monitor part, GitHub Issues for the error tracking part, and GitHub Pages to host your site. And so instead of paying thousands of dollars to Atlassian or getting like a small free thing that doesn't work properly, you can get your own uptime monitor and status page. free. Looks great, right? So as a startup founder, what I struggled with was, am I wasting too much time in this thing that is not generating revenue for my company? And this is really finally what I'm here to talk about. Like, now you know all the context, and now I have a couple of minutes to convince you that it's not. So the first thing that I realized is that free and open source software directly generates value for your company. When people look at a GitHub project with thousands of stars and so many companies using it, they realize, whoa, this is a great company to work at. And because I'm in the furniture industry, this really adds authenticity that, okay, we are a technology company. We're not like WeWork saying they're a technology company to get tech company valuations. We have a bunch of really cool, blended tech under the hood, which is proprietary for reasons I cannot get into, but it adds real value to us as a company. It really helps build company culture. So we have 2 engineering interns. We're planning on hiring full-time people now that we have a little bit of money in the bank. And having this, great open source project and so many others, tiny ones which have 0 stars. But the fact that we encourage this builds this really vibrant and dynamic culture where people are motivated to go to GitHub and look at what's happening rather than just staying in their IDE and thinking they're adding value. And I think for us it's really swinging back around, right? If you remember the early days or read about them, I don't remember them. I don't think I was born. It was like Stallman and Fleece software and all of that. And then we went to like Red Hat and like some companies, and now it's like a completely different direction. Like Microsoft, because of who we're here today, used to be like the antitrust evil company, and is now the most important company in open source. So open source is really coming back around, and I think embracing open source early on, I don't have to convince you, adds a lot of value to also a business. And so what I've learned over the past couple of months is that you want to encourage open source as a startup. Engineers shouldn't feel guilty. Like the first thing is, if they're on GitHub and learning about new code, or if they're writing some code, a couple hours every week, building an open source project, they should not feel guilty that they're wasting time away from core business. You should encourage that. The other thing is like this idea of open source in your lunch hours or in your weekends. I'm not a big fan of that. For example, my first intern, Mihir, he built Refined Hacker News, also 1K plus stars. So we want to encourage this in the company, but more importantly, we don't want people to feel like they have to take the weekends to do open source. It really has to be part of what we're building, because if you think about it, it's really like helping them build, get better at tech, therefore helping me directly on the business side. So you want to teach them how to, typo there. You want to teach them how to balance their time, commit to open source without wasting time and without losing focus from the company. You want to encourage hackathons, side projects, coming together and then building a really cool product really quickly, even if it's an internal tool. That helps a lot. Also, because of all of the dependencies you use, you get a lot of experience with open source. And the last thing that I think we're doing really well at Pabio is open sourcing parts of our code. Now, because we're a venture-backed company and one of our main pillars is our 3D tech, I cannot just open source all of that, but we can open source parts of our code. So all of our GitHub Actions workflows, parts of our site, all of the components we built, we open source all of that. So we have a healthy balance of keeping some tech proprietary and some open source. That's basically it, but I have a last bonus slide really quickly. I'll go over it in 30 seconds. Start an open source company, right? We're stars, we're maintainers, we know open source. There's so many ways to do it, right? Like Mongo does their dual licensing thingy, SourceGraph does their, core MIT, but then some stuff is enterprise licensing. Now there are more than, hundreds of ways to really build a business on top of open source. Nat talked about it a little bit yesterday. And I think you can get the best of both worlds, right? You can get the whole community angle, free contributors, people opening issues, not having legacy code because of that. And you can have the whole money part. So yeah, probably most likely my next company will be an open source company. But you guys know, there's so much of cool stuff happening in the sponsorware space, apart from just offering consultancy and support. And the last thing I'll leave you with is fundraising is easier than ever. Like today, there is so much of money going around Silicon Valley that if you're building a sustainable businesses built on top of an open source, you can raise money from great investors, and actually start up. And so I think keep building, keep shipping. You guys have great products, and thank you so much.